Hello, my friend, and welcome to this episode of the show. I am so thrilled you're here as we start part 2 of this series on transformational leadership. We started out with the very first episode. If you haven't listened to it, it's the last episode we just did a week ago in terms of idealized influence. Definitely want you to check that out. If you've started and you've listened to it, you're in the right place as we continue our series on this transformational leadership journey. What's transformational leadership? Man, it has been a dominant, if you will, paradigm in this world of leadership studies. It's really emphasizing inspiration, motivation of what followers. We want followers to achieve extraordinary outcomes. And so we're moving away from simply transactional leadership. In and of itself, we're adding transformation. Again, it's not either or, it's an and. And so lots of evolution in this journey over the last 50-ish years since it was incepted into the theoretical frameworks. And now practical applications, organizations are using this. We can use transformational leadership in families, in our communities, in our civic world. And I think when we begin to understand this evolution, and where we are today, we can gain massive insight into how leadership can be most effective in the journey of our own influence, right? So what is transactional leadership? Well, it's really rewards, punishments. You provide something to a follower, they exchange it. You exchange it for what needs to be, what you need. In other words, hey, it's carrots and sticks. You do this, I do that. In contrast, transformational leadership, it's really characterized by leaders who truly inspire, who truly motivate followers to raise the bar, to exceed your own self-interests for the good of the collective, of the organization, the cause, the family, the community. So it really just leads to higher levels of motivation. There's a lot of moral fiber in this construct for both leaders, for followers. And so all the way back from James McGregor Burns to looking at moral, ethical dimensions and so on. And there's a lot of philosophy, some philosophical ideals, and then it grows into more. I had mentioned in the last episode, Bernard Bass expanding the concept to in the 80s, and talking through many different aspects of the theory in application, right? He came up with what we call the 4 I's, and we're going through all of them: idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, individualized consideration. I know it's like a mouthful, but you'll learn them as we come along in this series, particularly this second installment on inspirational motivation we're going to cover here just shortly. But here's the thing about it. The thing about transactional and transformational leadership, they're not mutually exclusive. As I said, they can coexist. So effective leaders, and that's what we desire to be, effective leaders, we can use both styles, and it's really situationally dependent. And so, you may use transactional methods as a baseline of expectation, and then we add transformational techniques to inspire followers to exceed those expectations. And so this development can really make your leadership as a transformational leadership more measurable, because you might say, Nate, I can't measure transformational leadership. And of course, as you know, as I've said, and many as others have said, you can't manage what you can't measure, but you can make it more measurable and applicable in various organizational contexts. And we'll go through that so that we can look through ways to assess not only the transformational leadership, but also the impact. So different instruments, the MLQ and others, and we'll get into that throughout the series. So as we move through, and you say, Nate, what is it that really, really becomes of my leadership as I become more transformational and not just transactional? Well, lots of studies around this. I mean, in fact, likely there's more studies around transformational leadership than any other leadership approach throughout really the last 40, 50 years. And here's what studies demonstrate. they demonstrate that transformational leadership is closely associated with various positive organizational outcomes. That's a mouthful, right? What are they, Nate? Employee satisfaction. Employees have shown an increased employee satisfaction, increased commitment, increased performance through transformational leadership behavior of leaders. So it gives evidence, it gives us really some hope that transformational leadership could really be a powerful tool for driving not only organizational change, but also family change, cultural change, and civic change in achieving better results. So whether it's your organization, whether it's your family, we want to embrace, really recognize the value of transformational leadership, and not only in good times, but especially in times of crisis, of change. Leaders who can articulate a clear and compelling vision to inspire, motivate, foster an environment of growth, of innovation. Man, you know what? Those are the kind of leaders who are relevant. Those are kind of leaders who are seen as essential. And so if you're in the leadership space and you want to be a leader who is relevant and essential, then we must embrace some of these qualities that emerge. So that's where we're starting, and that's where we're going to hang our hats today on this journey of transformational leadership in our second installment. And so as we begin to talk through this second part, we're going to talk about inspirational motivation. Now if idealized influence, the last episode we did, is the foundation. Inspirational motivation is the heartbeat, really, of a transformational leadership. What is inspirational motivation? Well, in the realm of leadership, if you have an ability to inspire, if you have an ability to motivate others, that is a critical skill that separates great leaders from the rest. And you say, well, do you have to be inspirational? Do you have to be motivational to be a great leader? Some might argue the answer is yes. In fact, motivation is really the holy grail of leadership, right? Because motivation is what creates your influence journey. Now you say, Nate, sometimes I'm not motivated, but I have to be disciplined. That's another episode for another day. In fact, I think I might have already done one on that. That helps us to involve how we get people on the same trajectory so that we can have a winning organization. And it starts with vision. We have to be able to articulate a compelling vision of the future. We have to be able to articulate one that motivates followers to achieve that vision, whether it's in a business, whether it's in a family, whether it's in a community. And we must it's not a one and done, by the way. Our communication is essential in this sphere. And we must have the core driving followers to move beyond their self-interest and strive for that greater thing I mentioned. So this idea of inspirational motivation, we have to be inspired. We have to be motivated as leaders. Look in the mirror when we get up and say, hey, am I on fire for this cause? Or am I just ho-hum? If we're just ho-hum, now that doesn't mean that you have to be extremely emotional about it. It just means that you have to be driven because, back to the last episode, you're modeling the leadership. And if you're not engaged, if I'm not engaged, when I go into the office and I share the vision of the future, I want to share it with fire. I want to share it with enthusiasm. I want to share it with a belief that we are on the trajectory to do great things, to go beyond just the status quo and the basics. I want to take our ideas, and I want to raise both my and your level of motivation. I want to raise the moral fiber. I want to raise the core And I've got to do that through vision and communication. And we must know where we're going. I think I've said it before, followers are looking for us to understand. They want to understand, do we know where we're going? Do we know how to get there? And do others want to follow us there? Now you say, well, Nate, sometimes the steps in the future are not clear, so I don't always know the way. And that's a valid point. I'm not talking about micro. I'm talking about macro. I'm not talking about every detail, because the details are going to be driven and determined through the team and the collective often. But the macro, hey, what's the pathway? And we have to be able to communicate that, because when we use transformational, when we're a transformational leader, we have to use inspirational motivation to communicate that clear, appealing, ambitious vision of the future. There's no other way to do it, because the vision serves as a roadmap, and it guides our followers and it guides their efforts. It gives them a sense of purpose. It gives them a sense of direction, and our enthusiasm, our optimism, that's contagious. That sparks these followers, that sparks their commitment, that sparks their encouragement, and it encourages them to take the vision upward and onward. So take a step for just a moment and think about your demeanor. Think about your meter. Are you inspired? Do you have that enthusiasm? Are you optimism? Because either way, whether you're optimistic or pessimistic, it's contagious. So we've got to choose leaders, whether or not we're going to be one or the other. There's a lot of things we can't choose in life, a lot of things that are chosen for us, but here's what we can choose. We can choose our attitude. You might have heard me say this before. I can choose an attitude of optimism or pessimism. And if I'm in a place, by the way, in the moment where I'm feeling down, that's okay. Hey, give yourself permission. However, don't lead into battle in that state. Take some time, work yourself out of that state, because you don't want to be the kind of leader who's getting ready to go into battle and say, I don't know. Yeah, we might win, we might lose, we'll probably all die, but it's probably useless, all of this. And who wants to follow you in the battle? By the way, it's okay to say we'll probably all die. I mean, hey, but let's die well. Let's die with honor. Let's die serving a cause that's worthy. That's the difference. That's the optimism. And let's say, hey, you know what? Let's try not to die. Let's try not to. Let's set the highest possible expectation. Even if we're outnumbered, even if we're out resourced, let's set the highest possible expectation. Let's set and show confidence in our followers' abilities to meet those expectations. Let me tell you something, friend. Think about it. If you're a follower and someone who's leading you is effectively using this aspect of transformational leadership, think about the environment that's created. Think about the empowerment that's created. Think about how people reassess and retool how they see challenges to innovate, to go beyond what they thought possible. I mean, that, friend, is massively impactful. Massively, because as we set these types of goals, it reframes our thinking. And so what we do is we set challenging goals, yet attainable, that inspire followers to achieve higher levels of performance. So, and it's not just for them, it's for us too. And so we enhance people's sense of purpose. We enhance people's sense of motivation. We do this in our accounting and advisory firm. Tax season is tough. And so what I want to do is raise that bar. Let's raise the bar and say, hey, you know what? It's going to be challenging. Let's raise the bar and let's work diligently and give our all, and let's work to where we have low errors, because unfortunately, and you know this, the more people get spread thin, the possibility for errors increases. So let's say no when we need to say no, and let's take on just the right amount of work to take on. Let's take on stretch goals. Let's not rush through work, and let's deliver the best possible experience. That is an ideal that we set. And to motivate people. Why? Because we want to create a massively impactful experience for all of our stakeholders. Same thing works in a family. And by the way, this is also shared vision. I mean, the vision has to be shared. Every contribution, every resource, we have to share these in the workplace. It's pivotal. If you're in an organization and you have not created shared vision, it's time to do that right now. What is the worthy goal? What is the worthy cause? You might have a company where you sell people homes, and you have a rental business and you rent homes to people. And you say, well, they're just renting. No, you're providing a place for them to create the kind of memories that will last a lifetime. That's a worthy cause. So you say that to your maintenance person. We want to create a safe environment. When we go in to repair something, let's repair it with the knowledge and the belief that these repairs are not just repairs because we're just doing our daily duty. We're providing an opportunity for people to make memories. Whatever it is. And setting the highest possible expectation for our team, because we can overcome the challenges and deliver exceptional results together. Share stories of other organizations, of other situations and when people have succeeded against the odds, and help your team to push through the tough times. I love doing that. And not just in a work environment. This applies at home too. At home, you might have a child who is struggling with homework and say, I'm never going to need algebra or trigonometry or geometry. Why am I taking this dumb class? I think about it myself. I think, when's the last time I used geometry? And I didn't have a need for it throughout most of my life. In fact, the only thing I really remember from geometry class, I do remember like some basics of parallelograms and triangles and trapezoids and calculating the area and all that. And I think, but the most interesting thing about my class in high school in geometry was that my geometry teacher had a glass eye. And I thought, wow, that's kind of neat. And I'd stare at that glass eye. I know it sounds silly, but hey, I was 16. And so I don't remember that. But it's not necessarily that you will have a need for the geometry. And this is where the inspirational motivation comes in. What you're doing? You're overcoming an obstacle today to your own roadblock. You have a roadblock. You say, I don't really feel motivated for this. Okay. But let's look at it from a different perspective. Let's look at it like, hey, I desired to be a lifelong learner, no matter what it is, wherever I was. And I may not use that specific learning in my day-to-day, but it's helping me to learn how to be a lifelong learner and overcome obstacles when I don't feel motivated, because that's going to open the synapses in my brain, and it's going to help me to learn better. And the more I learn better, the easier it is to learn. And so I want to set an ambitious goal for myself as a leader of learning, a lifelong learner, someone who is curious. And that will be my goal in life. So there may be some things that I don't have a desire to do long term, but because I have a determination within myself to be a lifelong learner and embrace learning, no matter what the context, then maybe some classes aren't going to be extremely relevant in my life, but they're going to help me to overcome the obstacle of just not feeling like doing it. Because you know this, if you've been alive long enough, there's just going to be days you just don't feel like doing it. But then that's where the motivation turns into discipline, the discipline turns into habits, and those habits help us to achieve achieve what we never thought possible, because it's not just about today, it's about the future. And that's what vision is. So let's challenge ourselves to think creatively, to take bold action, and then innovate in ways that help, that our prior learning helped us to overcome. So even with our own growth and our own children, we might think, hey, you know what? Well, I'm not going to necessarily use this today. Yeah, I get it. But you're going to use your brain. So let's get some brain muscles going. Okay. I spend time in lifting weights in my home gym, and I do chest exercises, and I do leg exercises and back exercises. And I'm like, you know what? I'm probably not going to be doing this particular kind of exercise where I push weights up again anywhere else than right here. But what is it doing? It's not just the fact that I'm going to need to do that later. I may never need to do that. But what it's doing is it's helping me to strengthen my chest for other things. And so that strengthening of our mind for other things is exactly what we're talking about learning. And so in this journey, we're shifting our minds. We're shifting our minds in the traditional sense. And so we are not just giving orders to our families. We're not just giving orders to our employees to ensure compliance. In other words, hey, just get your homework done. You know what? That's required. If you want to get a car and you want to get straight A's to get that car, you got to do your homework. That's, a lot of that's the old way. And that was motivation, was largely what we called extrinsic. It's driven by the promise of some kind of reward or the fear of some kind of punishment. But the nature of humanity has been changing. The nature of our work has been changing, and it's more complex. People need more creative outlets. They need to have more meaning, more collaboration. So this approach, the old approach, it's really proven to be like more increasingly ineffective. So we're shifting away from this outdated model. Instead of just relying on authority, do this, you get that. We are now inspiring people by connecting what they do, whether their work, whether it's a family member, whether it's in your community, whether it's in your company, to a larger sense of purpose. And so this helps to align with this growing recognition that intrinsic motivation is important. It's doing work because it's inherently meaningful. It may not be satisfying in the moment to learn algebra, but it's satisfying to overcome the obstacle and perhaps have a strength of mind that I did not have through the challenge, through the trial that I do right now. So when we can articulate as leaders this compelling vision, we can inspire our teams, we can inspire our families to pursue that vision, we're more likely to have a deeper sense of engagement, to innovate, to perform better. And so that is how we move the needle forward. We must first be inspired. We must have new challenges, and we must reframe the current challenges so that we can adapt to them. We can leverage the tools and essentially create a sense of autonomy, foster empowerment, set clear goals, trust people to manage their work, inspire a greater sense of ownership, inspire a greater sense of responsibility, drive people forward, and really give people a sense that we can achieve far greater than we ever thought possible. Listen, friend, it's tangible rewards yes, they're motivating. Absolutely. But here's the thing. Transformational leaders, we can find the needs, the preferences of our followers. We can be flexible. And it's the core. This emotional, motivational core is based on our ability to compellingly communicate this vision of the future, to set those high expectations, set the bar high. The higher we set it, the more we have room to achieve it, and inspire our followers to achieve more than they ever thought possible. Wow. How about that? And if we can do this effectively, we can use inspirational motivation to align people around that shared purpose. We can foster massive success. And the world's complicated today. We have to create the groundedness and the ethical principles, make the expectations realistic, stretch goals, and we want people to benefit. And the world's changing. And this is one of the most vital tools for us when we truly want to inspire, when we want to engage, when we want to empower people to achieve greatness. And we find that if we can do this, it's not just people looking to meet expectations, but to exceed them. Driving success, for yourself, for your organization, for your community.